It's a new day, and that means new stories from Ocean Story. Let's begin. My parents died at a favorable age from old age. My mom and dad had 2 children. Me and my brother and his wife are now expecting a child. I'm currently married, but I don't have any children yet. My wife has some health problems. Sometimes I would go to my brother's wife and talk to her about her condition and the pregnancy. I love my brother and his wife, but we are not on the best of terms. Of course, we are polite to each other and try to be friendly. Now my brother's wife started calling me and asking for my help. After she got pregnant, I have no problem with helping my family. My brother thinks that I interfere too much in his wife's life, which could have a negative impact on their family and child. 3 days ago, I received a call from my brother's wife. She asked if I could take her to the hospital to have some procedures done. I was a little surprised by her request. I asked why her husband did not take her. She explained that he had planned to take her, but her husband was the guest of honor at a work meeting. He could not refuse because it was his career and income, so he asked her to go the next day for the procedures. But I needed it right that day. That's why I called you. This is how my brother's wife explained everything. When she explained everything to me in detail, I had no reason to refuse. I took her to the appointment. Afterwards, I wrote to my brother that I had taken his wife to the procedure. My brother called me back pretty quickly. He sounded angry, said that I should not have interfered in their family affairs. Later, I realized that I had taken his wife to the procedure to find out the sex of the child, and that's why my brother was angry. Because now, I had deprived him of a precious moment when he and his wife could have found out who was going to be born. My brother added that I am an asshole who meddles in their business all the time, and I'm interfering with his family happiness with his wife. Maybe he is right in his words. After all, I do spend a lot of time with his wife, and the obstetrician who came out of the room thought I was the patient's husband. But at that moment, I told my brother one thing. The only reason the doctor thought I was her husband, because the real husband was busy and had abandoned his paternal obligations. My brother could not stand my reproach, so he got very angry, yelled back at me, and hung up on me. I got home and told my wife everything. My wife said she understood that I wanted to help my brother's wife, but I'm a little bit mistaken because I help my brother's wife more often than my brother does, and that's probably why he's angry with me. Zoe, I think your brother felt guilty, but he had to take it out on someone. After all, he was the one who chose to go to the work meeting and not on the appointed date to go to the hospital to find out the sex of his own child. This guy clearly has something wrong with his priorities in life. I would call him a greedy man for whom money is more important than family. And because of this, I feel sorry for your brother's wife that she has such a bad husband. She will soon have a child to take care of. Perhaps her husband will be worried about it after the business meeting. You did well not to refuse to help the pregnant woman. It is an act of a decent man. I can say that you will be a great dad to your children someday. You will also be a great uncle to your brother's children and his wife. Lincoln, your brother is acting like a piece of shit. He's angry that you're his own brother helping his family. And instead of thanking you, he wants to insult you and make you look like a bad guy. He's just lucky to have a brother like that, but he doesn't appreciate your concern for his family at all. So in this situation, only your brother is the bad guy. Natally, your brother was supposed to attend a business meeting for work. That's because he's an honored guest there, and his wife refused to reschedule a doctor's appointment. I'm surprised how everything was so badly timed. I am sure that the business meeting was planned long ago, and the man knew about it. However, he waited until the last minute to inform his wife about it. Couldn't the business meeting have been held late at night to make it more convenient for everyone to come? Perhaps your brother simply lacked the strength and courage. That's why he decided to skip the event and just made an excuse. I think that he just didn't really want a child, so he did that. Jackson, if this man can't cut the umbilical cord until he's 23, then he shouldn't even think about any serious relationship. He will have short-term affairs, not a full-fledged family. He probably wants a good family, but he hasn't grown up to act like a man yet. A man who knows his priorities and puts his family before his work. Next story. 4 days ago, my nephew Mateo had his birthday, turning 12. 5 weeks before the holiday, my nephew wrote to me. He said He would love to wear his new hoodie. His favorite brand had just released a new hoodie, and it cost about $100. It was not too expensive for me for one thing, so I planned this purchase into my expenses for the month. Time passed, and I was already thinking that it was worth ordering the sweatshirt. That's when my nephew wrote to me on Instagram that day. He asked if I could share his gift and take something else instead of the sweatshirt, so that he and his friend could have gifts for their birthdays. After all, his friend Julian's birthday was the next day. They were almost born on the same day, but a few hours separated them. Children have been friends with each other for a long time and spend a lot of time together. That's why my nephew is very fond of his friend as my nephew, Matteo, explained to me. Julian's parents told him that they would not be able to give him a birthday present this year, so my nephew really wanted his friend to be happy on his birthday. I asked him if he had decided for sure. He answered firmly that he wanted it to be like that. It was not difficult for me to do what he wanted. I asked him what to give them both that would be appropriate. My nephew said it would be cool if I got them t-shirts with their favorite characters in caps. I didn't know that such footblocks are popular among children or teenagers nowadays, but I think my nephew knows best what would be cool for them. When I got all the details from my nephew, I went shopping. It took me a few days to buy everything, and I managed to do it since it was his birthday. I decided to buy a little more. I bought t-shirts and caps as Matteo asked me to. I also went to a toy store and found 2 medium-sized Lego sets. And on the way out, I picked up a couple of Spider-Man comics. I spent almost $160 on everything. Thank God, I had a few discounts with promo codes and I didn't spend that much. With the remaining $10, I bought sweets for the kids. Matteo's parents do not have much money, and they live in low-income housing. I often give expensive things for the holidays, as Matteo's mom and dad tell me, but in reality, everything is not that expensive, and I can sometimes afford it at the same time. I don't earn a lot of money either. I didn't want to just keep within the budget for the birthday party. I wanted to make my kids as happy as I could with the money I had. Maybe that's why I spent a little more than I planned. The day of my nephew's birthday party came. The children's parents decided to celebrate on the same day to save some money. We started giving them gifts. I handed over 2 packages for the children, and they opened everything with delight. The smile on their faces was so sincere and sweet. It's hard for me to describe how happy they were. The kids spent about an hour talking about all sorts of comic book characters and delights. I was happy to listen while they talked. A little later, we sat down and started eating the holiday meal. The mothers of the 2 boys had done a great job. I ate very quickly, and the kids were not torn away from the comics. Then they brought pizza, and we ate again, and the rest of the day, we all watched cartoons with the kids. At the very end of the holiday, I found out that Julian's parents, they were able to allocate some extra money. They bought some gifts for the children. When all the guests and attendees were about to go home, Julian and Matteo came up to me. They both said it was the best birthday of their lives. Julian's mother came up to me and sincerely thanked me for my kindness. She said that when she and her husband had the opportunity to pay back the money, they would do so. I smiled into her face and said, "I don't need to return the money. It was a gift from me to the boys." From the bottom of my heart. So at the end of the conversation, I told her and her husband to show more love to their son. In return, she promised to give me her delicious pancake recipe, which I ate more than anything else at the meal. Because they were incredibly delicious, it would be wrong to refuse her. At the end of the day, my nephew's dad got home. This is my brother, Matteo's dad. He saw the gifts and was definitely not happy. Even a little angry. My brother was expecting me to give him a sweater as planned because it was the cold season, and he needed something warm to wear. He said that I had wasted money buying these t-shirts and caps. I asked him if his son could wear his old jacket and put this t-shirt under it, and instead of a hat, he could wear a cap for now. So I think everything is fine and the gifts are well chosen. The most important thing is that the children are happy. They had a wonderful birthday, and that's the only thing I cared about at that moment. Not someone's opinion about it all. My brother strongly disagreed with me. He still thinks I was wrong, and that I should have given them that warm sweater. He must be going through a bad time to be so critical of the gift. But it doesn't have to be like that. Levy, probably a sweater would be more appropriate. If the cold season was approaching, you could use it to keep warm or do physical activity. But that's not your responsibility. If your brother expected you to provide your nephew with a sweater, he should have made that clear to you, and he shouldn't have told you anyway, because it's your gift to his child. Hannah, your little nephew did what adults don't do. Not all children sacrifice themselves like that for others. I think the boy learned these great values from you and his friend's parents. But maybe the boy is just that kind to others on his own. The same cannot be said for your greedy brother, because he was offended by you for buying the wrong things. Well, this is just adult absurdity. Let him buy a sweater for $10 on sale and be happy. I'm proud of your nephew and of you. Don't let your brother spoil his son's joyful moment on his birthday, and you should talk to your brother about it. After all, he behaved in a very insolent way with you. I hope his son doesn't find out about your conversation with his brother. Now I want to tell a different story. I married my girlfriend, whom I have known for 6 years. In total, we have been together for 3 years. My wife was a friend of my younger sister, although Samantha is older than her. So, I have actually known my wife for over 7 years. Several years of our married life have passed. My wife and I decided to try to have a child. Fortunately, we were successful and had no problems during my wife's pregnancy. At the moment, my wife has not yet given birth to a little baby. Now Samantha is in her 24th week. I am happy to be a dad to my child. When we told my family the news, the first thing my mother said was, "Every woman in our family gave birth to a daughter before they had a son, so my mother thought the baby would be a girl." She told us that it was a natural tradition in the family. My wife and I laughed and just agreed with my mom. But we seriously told our parents, especially my mom. We just wanted a happy and healthy child. We decided to go to the hospital and find out the sex of the child. It turned out that my wife was having a girl. Of course, we were happy because we are future parents. However, after our joy, we realized that we had to tell our family about the sex of the child. Samantha and I weren't thrilled with the idea of a wide and public disclosure of the sex, so we decided to stick to a simple announcement. To our family and a few friends, my mom was immediately upset by the news. She told my wife that the next time we try to have a child, my wife and I need to be more focused to give our family a son. My wife had a good laugh at my mom's words. Because she thought she was joking, my wife told my mom that if there is a next time, she won't be able to influence the sex of the child much. Even if she wanted to, it would have been nice if it had ended with that conversation. But my mom said it was my wife's fault, because when my mother was young, she gave birth to a girl first. In general, my mother gave birth to 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. All her other children had girls first. So for my mom it meant that my wife was not as good as the others. But my wife told my mom that she didn't care if she had a girl or not, and that she had to stop this kindergarten accusation, especially since it was not my wife's fault. But then my mom went way over the top with her words. She began to reproach my wife that she should want a child. That would allow her to build new family ties. From the outside, it was worse than a public quarrel in a supermarket. The whole thing was absolutely stupid on my mother's part. After a while, my wife couldn't stand my mother anymore and told her that as soon as my mother thinks about reading a biology book, which she studied in her school days, on the topic of fertilization and child development, then she would be able to talk to her and think about her apology to my wife. After all, my mother organized a concert that everyone was watching. The whole concert was finally over. After that, my wife and I went to our car. In the car, I told my wife that although I understand her disappointment with the evening, but I corrected my wife's behavior a little bit. I said that my wife also went overboard at the end of the conversation when she talked about studying a biology book. After all, with these words, she actually made my mother look like a stupid woman. Then my wife objected. I told her that I didn't like the way she spoke to me and that my mother shouldn't be upset that we're having a boy and not a girl. Obviously, your mother treats our child badly, and our son hasn't even been born yet, and someone already dislikes him. My wife said all this in the car. We were silent in the car for the last half of the drive home. To be honest, we didn't talk after we got home either. My wife couldn't calm down and kept grumbling under her breath. My girlfriend was angry that I was also on my mother's side, not just hers. Because I believe, at one point, it was only my mother's fault, but then my wife could not stand it and joined the quarrel. So she is almost as guilty as my mother. The next morning we woke up and I felt differently than usual. As if the feeling of guilt towards the woman is stronger than towards my mother. I don't know how to apologize to my wife for what I said. After all, in the evening, I said a lot of offensive things to her. Genesis, I think your wife will have to endure more than once such situations. And you as a husband need to take care of your wife more. Because I'm sure this is not the last time someone will tell you directly that she should want a girl because it's important for the whole family. You are not slaves to your traditions. Because your wife is right in talking to your mom. And what if it's a boy? Is he now less loved than if it was a girl? So, your mother is specifically wrong in spoiling your wife's mood. Connor, your mother sounds like a woman from the old days, when children were valued as commodities, a commodity that could be used to build relationships with other people. Well, honestly, that sounds absurd. It's a bit of a bad time. Maybe she should explain that the sex of a child is not as important now as it was 300 years ago. But man, your mother is going to be a grandmother once again, and instead of being happy, she starts arguing with your wife about why it's not a girl. She's obviously 50 years old. She should be smarter after all these years of life. I'm sorry that your wife has been subjected to moral abuse in a matter where she could not influence anything at all. Milva, you can't assume someone is stupid after they have called themselves one. Your wife was not being rude. She's right because it's true that if your mom knew the basics of biology, she would know that the male part determines the sex of the child. The woman can do nothing but carry the child. Dude, you started to be angry with your wife because she is. You've touched a sore spot for both you and your mom when she responded to her stupid reproaches with dignity in front of all the guests. Hunter, your mother is being very mean. She's trying to make your wife feel different because you couldn't give her a granddaughter. That's why this kind of behavior from your mother is not normal. I think it would be good for your mom to send you a link to the article. It's about the formation of the child's sex in the egg. She will find a lot of interesting things there. And maybe she could apologize to your wife for behaving like an animal and not a wonderful mother-in-law. My next story. Today my fiancé's family came to breakfast with us. It was her brother with his wife and little 6-year-old son Christian. Christian is a very curious boy, probably like all children of his age. I don't have a bad attitude towards this. The boy loves to play and explore different things, whether it is some events or real objects. And this cool little guy likes to have several looks. That's why he always has several outfits with him. I have a good income, so I have a lot of nice things in my house. Once, the bride's relatives came to our house. Then I took the guy to the room where I kept all my things. There I showed him my collection of beautiful shoes that I bought for the wedding. I also showed him my outfits that I wear to important events. The guy was delighted and incredibly happy. From that day on, I allowed Christian to borrow things. I wanted him to try them on for fun and to act like an adult. I was completely fine with that until this spring. That all changed when Christian asked to try on a couple of my expensive t-shirts. To be honest, it was partly my fault because I let him put them on. I couldn't keep an eye on him all the time because I was busy cleaning up for a family party I was organizing. I was sure that my friend was watching the boy because he had seen him putting on and walking around in those shirts, even though it was too big for him. The little guy just rolled it up, so it wasn't so bad. About half an hour passed, and when I was free from work, I went into the room where the kid was. When I came back, I saw that the boy had taken out his paints and started painting right on himself. He wanted to add more interesting details to his shirt. I was absolutely scared and stopped him immediately. The boy started crying like crazy and threw a tantrum. His dad ran to the crying child to ask what was wrong. The boy said that his shirt was too light and he wanted to make it darker. And he took the brush in my room, where I usually sit and think or write something. In general, that room is not for visitors, but the kid didn't care. I was upset that one of my beautiful t-shirts was now a second-rate item. However, I was a little rude when I spoke, and I had to apologize. Later, my fiancé's sister and husband apologized. I could see that they were very sorry, but they never offered to pay for the cost of the t-shirt. This upset me even more than the ruined t-shirt. My fiancé, without my knowledge, turned to her brother. She said he had to solve this problem in any way he could. Either buy me a new t-shirt or pay the amount of money it costs. I did not find out about this conversation soon. 2 weeks after the tragedy with my t-shirt, my girlfriend's brother sent me a message. He asked if I wanted them to pay for the cost of the t-shirt. I refused because it sounded like he was forced to send the message and he didn't do it from the bottom of his heart. So, after this story, we can go back to the very beginning. After my fiancé's family came to our house, it was their first visit. After my wife and I got engaged, their son Christian saw my wristwatch, which they gave me as a gift for my engagement, so he asked me to show him the watch. Of course, I did not refuse him such a trifle. After lunch, we all sat in the living room and talked. Christian asked me to show him the watch again. When he looked at it, he asked if he could try it on. I was expecting my fiancé's brother to intervene immediately. He would tell his son that it was inappropriate. But it did not happen as I would have liked. The boy's father said nothing and just laughed and looked at me with a smile. Personally, I was uncomfortable with the boy trying on my watch. For a number of reasons of my own, the first important reason was that the watch is very personal to me and a very expensive thing. The second reason was more emotional. I was afraid that this henchman would do something with that watch. After all, the pain from the t-shirt has not yet passed, and I have not forgiven him yet. I answered the kid. This watch is very precious to me and I wanted to keep it on my hand. But don't be upset, I have my dad's old watch. I can give it to you. The boy firmly said no. He did not stop at my answer and asked me again. But my answer did not change for him. He got upset and started crying. As soon as his dad heard him crying, he left. My fiancé's brother intervened and said, "Dude, just let him try it on for a moment, it's just a watch. Nothing will happen to it if a boy tries it on." At that moment, I could not take it anymore, so I simply said, I would not like to give him the watch. There was an awkward and long silence. After a moment, his wife said, "It's time for us to go home." But before they left my apartment, my fiancé's brother said, "Now I understand why you don't want children. You must be terrible parents, so not having children will be good for you." My fiancé just froze in place. At this statement, I couldn't stand it, so I answered, "You shouldn't say that." To which he simply replied, "That's the truth." He smiled and left with his family. Now my fiancé refuses to talk to her brother. She told me that he will not be in our house anymore. My girlfriend doesn't blame me for what happened, but my thoughts tell me that I must have caused it all. If I had been kinder and more patient, there would not have been a fight. I wonder if the whole problem is really in me. Hudson, a little boy, doesn't need to try on an expensive watch. No one should try on other people's things without their permission. The watch is personal because it was given as an engagement gift. It's not a simple thing like a t-shirt. I'm honestly shocked by his parents' reaction, especially after what happened with the t-shirt. Anna, you shouldn't think that everything you have can be damaged or destroyed just because your fiancé's brother doesn't respect your valuables. The boy is not 100% to blame. Children don't understand that, but his parents do, and it is the child's parents who lack respect for you and your things. I think that's why the father likes to watch your things deteriorate. And what he said to you and the girl was an act of aggression. Because you wouldn't let his son wear your watch, this boy's father is acting like a real jerk or asshole. Josia, what would have happened if you had let him try on the watch? The boy started asking to try on things that are being prepared for the wedding and ruined them just like the t-shirt. A good decision would be not to invite their evil family to the wedding. It seems that the child is spoiled and the father or mother obviously cannot explain to their son what he can and cannot do with other people's things. Everly, you did well not to remain silent when that bastard said such offensive things. Do you know how ridiculous it looks? That a man who doesn't look after his son and doesn't teach him to respect other people's things. Maybe he treats others so badly they look at you as if they are the best parents in the world, and you actually have much better parenting skills than they do. Your fiancé's relatives are just stupid and proud. A story that really surprised me. 2 days ago, my husband had a personal holiday to make him happy. I decided to buy a big family puzzle. For your information, we have We live in a small house with my husband and our young son. After we came home, we started to look at how to put that puzzle together. I was in a bit of a hurry because I wanted to put it together quickly to enjoy the view. However, my husband wanted to do everything slowly and clearly. He said that we should complete the puzzle faster because our son was getting in the way a bit. After all, he started walking around the puzzle and chewing on some of the pieces. Since the puzzle was not the cheapest one, we didn't want our son to ruin it. Moreover, my husband loves this type of entertainment and is careful with it. A little while later, my son went to play a little further, and I could continue to assemble the puzzle. My husband asked me to stop again, but I had almost completed 47% of the puzzle. Although my son was busy doing his own thing, he came back and started making a mess again. The man started telling my son to stop and be careful. I answered the man's words to my son. It is okay if you are going to put the puzzle pieces around your son. You can let him help me. After all, I didn't want to clean up that mess by myself after my son, so our baby helped me clean it up. In the end, that evening we were unable to complete the puzzle. The next day, we were able to put it together again, but it turned out that a large part of the puzzle was damaged. It was no longer possible to put it back together. My husband became very upset that his new puzzle was ruined even before we could put it together even once. The whole puzzle was ruined by our son, actually because of me. I left it on the table and we went to the bedroom with my husband. And in the morning, when we got to the puzzle, it turned out that it was ruined. My son had chewed on some of it and lost some of it. So I feel all the blame for this puzzle. It makes no sense to be angry with your son. He is your child who does not understand these things. How can I be in front of my husband after this? Grayson, are you really so stupid that you put the puzzle in easy reach of the child? Then, when your toddler starts to spoil your husband's new way of entertaining, of course, he's annoyed that you didn't listen to him. That's why your husband is angry that you are sitting there doing what? You were doing as if nothing had happened. You should be more attentive to things if you have a small child. You need to take good care of a child, and I can see that you have problems with that. Dylan, you certainly made a great decision to ignore the problem. Like, I was already doing the puzzle. Even though the baby got in the way, I have to finish what I started. Imagine how your husband felt when his gift was destroyed, as if you had received something valuable and expensive. But before you could open the valuable thing, someone else opened it, started touching it. Maybe they started admiring it or throwing it in all directions, breaking it when you begged them not to, but that person didn't care and just did what they wanted. That's how your husband felt about it. I understand that that puzzle is something you play together, but it was not yours to make it right. You need to buy a new puzzle, no matter how much it costs. Lily, as a sensitive wife, you should have listened to your husband's words. He was just asking you to stop and continue later, but you just did what you wanted to do. Obviously, your husband was right, that you shouldn't have done it, so we can safely say that you are the one who is to blame for the puzzle. I have an important question for you. Do you usually belittle your husband and ignore his feelings and aspects of your marriage? Because of your story, it's a public story, but you're the one who's at fault. And you just ignore your husband, as if you were a victim of his anger, just like that. Somehow you don't look like a caring and loving woman, a woman who thinks not only about her own feelings. If you haven't apologized to your husband yet, then fix it.